Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Red River Roundup right here on 446 Sports. We're presented by the Gridiron All-American Football Game, and this is episode 8 of the 2025 season. We're through 7 weeks of high school football, and it just seems to get more and more compelling every single week. There's been some big district matchups, a lot of blowouts last night as some teams are in those district matchups that are just kind of one-sided, but some really good games around the state. And at this point, we're kind of where we're not looking at sports writers polls as much anymore. We're starting to look at those power ratings as those really start to make sense. Those really start to tell us a little bit about who the top teams in some of these brackets are going to be as we are in the home stretch of the regular season. A few teams are hoping they're only halfway done, but we are through 7 weeks. Couple highlights from around the state. Really, the game of the week in a lot of places would be Ruston going to Monroe to take on the Neville Tigers. We'll talk with Sean Fox from Sports Talk 97.7 in the North Delta Ramble here in a minute to recap that game. Haynesville Golden Tornado, they're undefeated, still at 7-0, a two-time runner-up. They've usually dominated that district in recent weeks, so we'll see if they can continue to do that. Calvary Baptist, they roll 48-0 over the Union Farmers. They seem to have reloaded on offense, very strong on defense, got several college commitments on that sideline, and they're, in my opinion, as good as anybody in Select D3. Parkway Panthers remain undefeated. They've got Shreve, Benton, and Evangel to finish off the regular season. So it'll be interesting to see how the Panthers can keep pace in District 1-5A. Manny, they're a surprising 4-3, and they could run the table in their district. They get a win last night. They've got 3 games left that they all could win. So Coach Tyler Hassel in his first year in Sabine Parish got the Tigers rolling. West Monroe over Ouachita Parish. That was, I believe, a 14-point game. Not surprising to a lot, but again, another quality matchup in that district, and those won't stop as we round out October. Tioga over West Ouachita. The Indians could be 8-1 going into that Week 10 matchup against Franklin Parish. That district has a lot of good matchups coming up in the next couple weeks. Coach Dan Chrisman in his first year has the Indians rolling on 446 Sports. And again, that could be a big game coming up against Franklin Parish in Week 10. Mangum goes on the road to Oak Grove. They get a big win in West Carroll Parish, and they will host the OCS Eagles next. OCS got a big shutout win on Thursday night over Beekman Charter. The Dragons, really nice quality win to go on the road and beat an Oak Grove team that's reloading a little bit, but an Oak Grove team that's still Oak Grove. So a great win for the Dragons, and again, that sets up a big game with the Eagles next week. And then Bunkie and Gina both get wins in Week 7. They will face off next Friday, or this Friday, actually, in Gina, Week 8. Or excuse me, that game is at Bunkie, actually. That's a Week 8 matchup between the Giants and the Panthers, 2 Division III, really juggernauts in the past few years. So that'll be a really good game that we'll all be looking forward to. But game of the night, anywhere north of I-10 and probably regardless of anywhere you are in the boot, was the 100th matchup of the Neville Tigers and the Ruston Bearcats. And we will bring on Sean Fox from Sports Talk 97.7 and the North Delta Ramble. And Fox, look, I'll plug the Bayou Jam here really quick, because the interesting thing about that event is that, yeah, it's a jamboree. It doesn't count. It's 2 quarters. But you see the way the schools bust the teams in, bust the bands in. You see the way that event is set up. I always say that you need to pay attention to what happens in those Bayou Jams, because those coaches and players don't want anything to look like they wouldn't want it to look in the regular season. Ruston and Neville kind of kicked off that event this past fall on Friday night. It was a game of runs in that game. Ruston looking dominant for part of the game. Neville looking dominant for part of the game. You put that result in your pocket from the Bayou Jam. Here we are in Week 7. That seems to be what happened.
So first of all, it's been a minute since I've seen you. What a gorgeous head of lettuce you've got going right now.
Hey, look, one day I might look like you, Sean. So I gotta get it while I can.
Rep those Fabio looks while you can. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the jamboree, because this played out, while at a higher score, very similar to the Bayou Jam, where like the first half or first quarter of the Bayou Jam, Neville absolutely dominated. And then just like that, Ruston dominates and they end up winning. This game, like I thought Neville going into the season, especially with Parker Robinson, um, and the defense that they had, even in a loaded district, I thought Neville was going to be the team to beat. And through the first 5 or 6 weeks, Neville, and they had some injuries up front that certainly hurt. Robinson was playing with multiple injuries. It just wasn't clicking like I thought it did. Well, then the game versus Pineville, I think you finally started to see for the first time they were healthy. And for 3 quarters, I was like, 3.5 quarters, this is the Neville team I expected to see this season. It was the best they've been. They were balanced on offense. The defense was getting after it. I mean, really, the only score till late that they had one touchdown on a long throw, they being Ruston. The other one was a pick six. Neville's defense was dominating. And then, really, in the blink of an eye, the entire game changed. And I've seen a lot of high school football. I mean, up 17 with about 7 minutes left, you feel pretty comfortable. And then before you look up, Rusted wins. I mean, there's look. I'm going to admit, you know this, Marshall. Like, I do have a bias. My daughter cheers at Neville. Like, I generally do root for all of our teams, but when my kid's involved, I want to win. I'm waking up today. I just got doing our early high school show. I'm still in shock at what I saw. And again, I think it says a lot about Jared Ball and this Ruston program and what he's built. There's a reason they've been in the dome 3 straight years. And Sam Hartwell, I don't think he's a college quarterback. I could be wrong, but he kind of reminds me of the high school version of Haynes King. He's just a dog. He's just a football player. And then they've got a guy who is one of one. You can't teach 6'8". And in Hudson's
May have lost Fox there, but yeah, he was talking about
Oh,
Ahmad
God.
Hudson. Yeah.
Yeah, he's special. And he like there's just some plays that he made that there's not and for example, late, and this is when I think Ruston was trying to get it to a one score game. They were at facing a 3rd and 7 on about Ruston's 45, and it was a slant pass to Hudson that I don't think anybody else in the state of Louisiana could make that catch. He was 6'8". They probably threw it about 7 feet. He went up and got it. I mean, he just absolutely snagged it. It was an incredible play. And yeah, I mean, kudos to Ruston. it was it was a hell of a performance. And for Neville, I still think they're really good, but it's one of those things where you better not let this beat you twice because because they're going to go to a very pissed off Ouachita team who's also really good, coming off a game against West Monroe where they thought they could win outside of Pineville. And I think those kids, I think the world of them, if they're in any other district, things are probably different.
Sure.
But outside of Pineville, every single game is a war.
You mentioned every single game, and Neville, after this, you dust yourself off. You pick yourself up off the mat. And week 8, you mentioned the Lions. Week 9, the Rebels. Week 10, the Trojans. So,
Yeah.
what is for Neville within that locker room? Again, not the end of the world at all. It's tough the way you lost the game. It's the 100th matchup that means a ton, and it's a dub you want to get. But what do the Tigers do? What does Mike Collins do? And what does that roster do to just bow up and take on these next 3 games? Because there's a lot to be gained for Neville if they can get a good show in here in the rest of October.
No, I mean, obviously, you still got everything to play for. And I do think this district is that good that the team that finishes 5th of 6, I could see on the carpet of the Superdome. I really can. I think the district and these teams are that good. The main thing, if I'm Coach Collins, is, and this has been a huge red flag. This is either the 4th, I know for sure the 3rd time in as many weeks that a team has got so 3 of the last 4 weeks, an onside kick against them late. And it ended up being the difference against St. Thomas More. Sterlington got an onside kick and was driving to potentially tie or take the lead had they gone for 2. Neville did get an interception. And then this pass, like, You felt the game change with about 5 minutes left when Rustin got the onside kick. And they were still down 2 scores, but it just kind of felt like the wind went out of the sails of Neville. And then there was another, and they didn't get an onside kick, but they did a squib kick perfectly that they almost picked up. Luckily, Neville knocked out of bounds on their own 10-yard line. But all of a sudden, then you got Neville on their own 10. Rustin's got all the momentum, 3 timeouts. And so if I'm doing anything, I'm spending most of my time on the return game because that has been the Achilles heel for Neville the last month of the season.
So, I tell you this all the time. You're my hero. I've been listening to you on Sports Talk 97.7 for a long time. But tell me a little bit about the North Delta Ramble, because it seems like that's what you're doing is rambling.
So obviously, Marshall, like you've got your own brand, which again, congratulations on this. Got an opportunity. Been talking to this guy, Alan Brockman. He's a really creative guy. He's really into music and entertainment. And he kind of had a vision of almost like a digital newspaper because things have changed about what's going on in the community. And he reached out to me. He's like, I know how big sports are. Would you like to be a part of this? And I was like, sure, because I could see where the tea leaves were reading. And so we've gone out over the past 2 years, and this year we've made, like last year I kind of did it pro bono because I thought we were building something. Luckily, it's turned into a bit of a paid gig, but we're really putting the spotlight on our local sports. We have done some stuff on the colleges. There's a lot more red tape to do that, but a lot on these high school football teams and basketball teams, baseball and softball teams, and it's going extremely well. Most of our videos get seen by over 40,000 people, a lot of shares, a lot of support. And I'll tell you, like, as long as I've done radio, which is over 20 years, I have just as many people now recognizing me because of the visual. Like, I've gotten the public, like, hey, Sean, how you doing? That I've never met because of the North Delta Ramble. So I've been really blessed. Been very busy. I've now added ESPN Plus. I'm on the call the ULM Troy game in a little while. Been very blessed recently that it took a while, but if people want me, and I'm gonna try to do as much as I can while I can do it. So between the North Delta Ramble, Sports Talk 97.7, ESPN Plus, I've been staying pretty busy.
Well, don't tell Puffy this, but I want to be like you one day. And like I said, I appreciate your time this morning, recapping. You were the man on the scene last night for that 100th matchup, and I again love to follow you. Sports Talk 97.7 and the North Delta Ramble Sports.
Well, let me just tell you this, and I mean this. I don't think I've ever seen anybody take like a fish to water like you have to play-by-play. You never did it before, but you never fooled me. I think you are one of the best that does it. So kudos to you. So you do your research, and it pays off.
Thank you so much, Fox. And again, I appreciate your time and recapping that game for us. Maybe we can have you on again soon.
Absolutely. You tell me when.
All right, buddy. See you soon. That's Sean Fox, Sports Talk 97.7 in Ruston, Monroe, and also North Delta Ramble. Check them out online. They do a great job covering sports and news and everything else in that area. We'll jump right to the North Shore with Mike McMillan of the North Shore Prep Report. And Mike, I want to start off, if you don't mind, with Covington and Slidell, because Coach Salter said after that game last night, he knew his defense was good. You knew that their defense was good. There's talent, all on that defensive side of the ball. He said he didn't expect the defense to play that well. 28-7 over the Tigers.
Yeah, Marshall, I'll kind of echo that sentiment. We've talked about it a lot. You know how high I am on those guys, just talent-wise and depth. It is kind of crazy. But Slidell came in, and they're one of the higher scoring and yardage offenses in the state, not just on the North Shore. And they shut them down. I mean, last night, Jaquan Jones, who's over 1,000 yards already this season, he had 13 carries for 16 yards. That's pretty substantial, and that kind of shut down the passing game at the same time. Ricky Williams only threw for 60 yards. A backup quarterback came in. He was 2 for 3, threw a touchdown. But really big win. And I think it's week 7, but I think this is how Covington is going to win games, right? I don't think the offense is going to be this big, explosive 40-point offense, but they can score 20 to 30 points a game. And if their defense can play like they did last night, they're in every game. The thing that I love most about their defense is, we talk about it. The guys up front, the linebacking core, and the secondary, they're talented and deep in all 3 areas. So it's really hard as an offense to find a way to attack them. But that's a big win for them last night. The season can go one of 2 ways there, right? A loss last night to Slidell and out of district, coming off of a kind of a disappointing showing against Mandeville. So kudos to those guys and Coach Salter and getting that group, back ready to go. And look, he's done this a long time, Coach Salter. So he knows what he's doing, and kudos to him for kind of executing last night. They did what they needed to do for sure.
The other one that I'm sure just caught a lot of people's attention around the North Shore, Hammond 20, Mandeville 17. This is, by my count, 5-2 for Hammond for the first time since 2022, and I believe the first win over the Skippers since 2018. You said a few weeks ago, is this Hammond season going to look different than it has the past few years, where it's kind of gone the same way? But 5-2 and a great win over Mandeville. Tours, I mean, you got to give your props to him this morning.
Yeah, I was home last night, off on a Friday night, and decided, hey, rather than go, check out one game, media now is so incredible. I think I had 4 or 5 different games on here in my office at the house, and it was incredible. But the end of that game was absolutely wild. And I'll say this, I think we talked about them going into St. Paul's, and would it just be a repeat of last year? They got kind of blown out last year. They went into St. Paul's 4-1 and got blown out at St. Paul's against Mandeville and against Covington. And they didn't play bad at St. Paul's. St. Paul's is a really good football team and ran the ball really well, but that game was a little bit closer than it looked, but after the first quarter. But I am so happy for Coach Buckles and that crew, because this has been their focus the whole offseason, was we can't do what we've been. Like, we have to be a different Hammond team. We have to go win these big staple games. And they did it last night. I got to talk to Coach Buckles a little bit late last night, and I'll be there this week and talk to those guys and get some interviews out. But, kudos to them. It was ugly in the fourth quarter. I think both ways. I think Coach Jones probably wasn't real happy with their performance. But I'll say this, it's 2 good football teams, so somebody has to lose. I'm really, really impressed with running back Zaylen Bennett from Hammond. And I'll talk to Coach Buckles about this. I'm not afraid to say it here. I think they need to give him the ball more. Like, he's a 25 carry a game guy. I don't know what he ran for last night, but he had some big runs. He's really patient. When he hits a hole, he hits it. And Mandeville's front, like you saw it last week against Covington, is really good. So kudos to Hammond for handling that front. And he put up 20 points. Taron Jones completed some passes. Reginald Monroe, wide receiver, call him Donut. He's dynamic in space. Mandeville kind of kept the ball out of his hands on special teams, kind of, punting out of bounds and into the boundary. But big game. Crew Calora played well. I think Mandeville defensively played well. I think the Achilles of Mandeville right now is they don't really have that dynamic running game. So they're a little bit one-dimensional in my mind. They use a lot of short passes at the line of scrimmage as a kind of an extension to that run game. They do it really well. But they, had a chance before half to kind of go in and put up some points, and they couldn't do it. I don't think it'll put the game away, because I think Hammond's a really good football team. I think Coach Jones and that crew knew what they were doing there. But, now it's 6-5A. You've got St. Paul's and Hammond at the top, right? Which is kind of crazy.
And looking at some of the divisions below, Division I, North Lake Christian with a Thursday night win over Pope John Paul, that puts them in the driver's seat in that district. A-Meet over Pine, which was a really good matchup of 2 teams that we'll continue to see in a few weeks. And Kentwood started off really slow. They're up to 4-3, and they have a game against Southern Lab next week. in a battle of two different Division IV brackets. So any of those teams through 7 weeks kind of standing out to you as far as performance and outlook as they finish the regular season?
Yeah, I'll touch on that Northlake Pope game first. Really exciting atmosphere in Slidell, some 9-2A football, but they don't look like 9-2A teams. Like if you go watch these games, they're linemen, they're linebackers, they're secondary, they're athletes. They've got some talent on both sides of the ball and all over the place. I think what was impressive for Northlake Christian is Cam Casnave, I'm going to say only had 120 yards rushing, but it was a tough 120. Like Pope played really, really good defense there. Cody Mills, their defensive coordinator, he had a great game plan there. That went really well for them. I think the key to that game, Marshall, was Northlake held Dominic Smith in check. He had 80 yards on like 20 carries, something like that. The biggest difference for me in that game, outside of the defense, Charlie Gilmore, who he's an absolute machine back there. A ball's in the air and Charlie's going to go get it. He's got Spider-Man hands. But quarterback Sam Grant, he came in and I think Northlake's kind of trying to figure out who he is and what he can do. He was huge Friday night. He had some big runs. He ran for 2 touchdowns. He completed a 3rd and 15 to extend a drive in the third quarter that Northlake went in and punched it in. And then Pope pins Northlake down late inside the 1, a quarterback sneak. He kind of bounces outside for 35 yards and kind of seals the deal, right? So big game for him. He ran for, what did he run for? 84 yards on 11 carries and 2 touchdowns. That's big for a team like Northlake to have another weapon, right? Outside of that, District 8 3A, we started covering those guys, and I am so excited just from their players, their fan bases, a great group of coaches. Really impressed with Jules Sumner, obviously. They played Bogalusa last night. Not a knock on Bogalusa, but they're down. I mean, it's not good right now. But Jules Sumner goes in, they win 57-0. They kind of handle business there. I'm a little surprised by the Pine A-Meet score.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, but you've got to think about this. A-Meet, they've got some athletes, man. Franklin Morgan Jr., he's a Louisiana Tech commit. He's really good. He had a great game last night. In fact, he had 2 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown. I'm sorry, on Thursday night. He had 2 catches, 75 yards, a touchdown. He had a 42-yard punt return. He had 40 yards rushing. He had 6 tackles. He's dynamic. They've got a sophomore running back, Jamira Dillon, who's really good. He's about 5'7", 5'8", and he can scoot. Like, he reminds me a lot of kind of a Chiron Carey-esque type player. He's really good. And then for Sumner, Jamon Dyson and Jeremiah Brooks, they run the ball well. That's what they want to do. And going back to Pine and that score, that offense, if you fall behind, it's tough. Now, their quarterback, Trey Knight, I believe it is, they can throw it, but it's not what they do, right? So when they fall behind, it's a little bit difficult, but that's going to be a big one down the stretch. You've still got Jules Sumner and Pine to play each other. A-Meet and Jules Sumner to play each other. That's going to be exciting. That's for sure.
A couple other things I wanted to see if I could get your thoughts on. Edie White over Lutcher. You mentioned Edie White, kind of anticipating them having a strong run in the latter part of the season. That seems to be the case with that win. Destrehan, they make the long trip to Caddo Parish. They're on a 4-game win streak coming off of that loss to Ash at home. But one of the games south of the lake that I'm really looking forward to next week, St. Charles Catholic and Belle Chase. So 2 teams that are really, really strong. And we're used to St. Charles Catholic. I kind of compare them to OCS and Monroe, just the way they quietly reload every year and have that
program was.
But my goodness, Belle Chase has been boat racing people all year. I mean, I think they started off with 3 straight shutouts and they're scoring a bunch, not allowing a bunch. But Cardinals and Comets next week, that's going to be a darn good matchup.
This is what I love about high school football. You got a team in Belle Chase that I'm not going to say they came out of nowhere. They had a decent team last year, but they've got some real talent. Belle Chase can hurt you in all kind of ways. They've got extreme athletes. St. Charles is, to me, if you want a program, you cookie cutter everything St. Charles does, from practice script to Thursdays to pregame to postgame. They do it all right. And it shows, because when's the last time St. Charles has dipped, right? So I think that's a huge matchup.
Yes.
And look, Destrehan lost 2 games. They lose a very close game to Catholic of Baton Rouge in week 1 in Baton Rouge. They lose in week 3 to Ash, right? At home, in a close game. So now, as a River Parish guy, I'm really excited. I think it's week 9. It's Destrehan and Hahnville, right? Hahnville gets another big win last night. They're continuing to cruise. There's going to be 10,000 people there. It doesn't matter where it's at, but when those records are like that, it's going to garner a big crowd. In the Catholic League last night, I know you ask me all the time, Carr did Carr stuff to Jesuit last night. It wasn't close. And Carr's so dynamic. St. Aug continues to roll. Really, really impressed with St. Aug. And look, I didn't see this from John Curtis, right? John Curtis, they shut down Brother Martin pretty good last night. Eastern Royal, they kind of held him in check. John Curtis has got a really good secondary, and little Jeff Curtis, I say little Jeff Curtis because he's the younger Jeff Curtis, the son of Jeff Curtis. But, at linebacker, he had some plays where he was kind of manned up on Eastern Royal, covering the field, and stayed with him. It was impressive. But Curtis runs the ball really well. Their quarterback, and they've had some really good quarterbacks over the years, he executes that offense just as good as any of them. He's really good. He's really good with the ball in his hands as well. So that was impressive. Marshall, in some other things here on the North Shore, Lakeshore continues to dominate, right? That just continues to happen. Salmon gets a big win last night that they kind of needed in a bounce back way, I'd say. That was kind of massive for them in my mind. North Shore gave let me find my scores here. North Shore gave Chalmette all they could handle, and Chalmette's a really good football team. Coach Sanders over there at North Shore, they're continuing to kind of put up numbers and compete every week. Nobody wants to see them. It's right now we're going into week 8, and I still feel like there's everything to play for everybody. And I'll say this: keep in mind that Slidell last season was like 1-7 going into week 8, or 1-6 going into week 8, and they went and competed. And I think some of their success this year is due to that, right? So next week, Slidell and Salmon is going to be an absolute bonkers atmosphere in Slidell. It'll be wild. I'm really excited about that one. I think that's one that people will get up for. Covington, Hammond. What do we say the same thing again that we said last week?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Who's Hammond? Who's Covington? Right? Like, who are these teams? Who are they going to be long term? And then one that I like a lot is Laranja at Lakeshore. Coach Indes is back on a roll over there. They got some big wins under their belt this season. They're a 1-loss team. And Laranja, Coach Powell, they've got Ryland James, they've got a good running game, which I think the key to beating Lakeshore is you've got to run the ball. You got to keep the ball out of their offense. Because when Brody Loudermilk gets it, they're going to run 7-8 minutes off the clock, and they're going to get yardage, and they're probably going to score a touchdown. So, you've got to be efficient. You don't want 3 and outs and giving the ball back to those guys. That's for sure. You might get 2 possessions in the first half if that happens.
Mike McMillan with the North Shore Prep Report. Check them out. They got some stuff on tap for this week, northshoreprepreport.com. Also, you can find them on your social channels as well. Mike, thank you so much. As always, we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Marshall. Look, keep up the great work, man. I'm gonna stick around and listen here for the remaining of the show. And
please do.
Appreciate everything you guys do, man.
Yep.
Thanks for having me.
You too, Mike. You're the best. All right, let's hop over to Southwest Louisiana and talk to Chasen Tavares. There was a lot of good games that took place. Again, Thursday, Friday, there's pretty active for the Lake Charles area during that part of the week. Quick shout out to Oberlin. Oberlin got a win last night. Actually had to forfeit the game the previous week. So Oberlin Tigers, after forfeiting a game, they get back and get a win. So congrats to Oberlin there. But Chasten, you mentioned a few weeks ago, and I've been thinking about this ever since, that the run that Hamilton Christian could potentially go on, the one speed bump might be Elton. And I think in that game last night, Elton actually might have had a lead, somewhere into that game. But Hamilton Christian, they stay unscathed. But that was a really great challenge from Elton, and you called that.
Yeah, look at Guy Dicey. First off, thanks for having me as always. Yeah, look, it got a little dicey for Hamilton Christian. That was billed. That's two of the best athletes in all of Southwest Louisiana going at it. I mean, look, McKeel Lemoyne for Elton, Javon Vital for Hamilton Christian. They've combined for over 50 touchdowns between the two of them this year. That's number one and number two on the touchdown leaders so far this season. Yeah, it's kind of silly. So that one was built up. I'm going to be quite honest with you. I actually. Elton hung in better than I thought they were going to. Now, I will say the team who beats Hamilton is also going to be plagued by Hamilton beating Hamilton. I got to watch the Grand Lake game last week, and Hamilton racked up over 200 yards in penalties. They had 18 penalties in the first half and led 28-0. It was kind of the same last night. They had already racked up, I think, because I was not there, but Roderick sent me, they had 70 yards in penalties in the first half. I think it was 8 penalties for, 80 yards or something like that. And they were down. Things just weren't going right. They couldn't figure out McKeel Lemoyne, which most people haven't. But look, Dexter Washington, great coach, the legend, able to fire up the guys and get them going. And look, they were able to find a way to get a win against Elton. And look, that was one of the teams I told you a couple of weeks ago that I thought could probably go undefeated. That was one of my 3 teams. I'm still riding pretty good on that little prediction there. I'm still riding pretty good there, but they continue to roll. The back half of the schedule, the last couple of games, a little bit easier on the district side. They get the kind of the 2 tough ones right out of the gate, and Grand Lake and Elton. But yeah, look, Hamilton just continues to roll, man.
You covered Lake Charles College Prep and St. Louis Catholic last night. Seems like St. Louis, you reported that they hung around a little bit, but the Blazers continue to be very impressive in the regular season.
Yeah, look, Prep is good. Look, they've got athletes all over the field. They actually had a couple of the turnover. The penalties kind of hurt them last night, to be quite honest with you. They had a couple. Aiden Carter had, I believe, 2 touchdowns. One of them, 87 yards, that was called back due to a couple of holding penalties. So I know Coach Eric Franklin going to want to get that cleaned up. It's funny because he and I have joked pregame the last couple of weeks. Those guys really don't know how to play an uncompetitive football game, and I don't want to say a good football game because they've put it together. But defensively, they just like to keep it interesting. I'll put it to you that way. They've been able to do it pretty much every week of the season. They did so against Jennings last week. Jennings hung around there for a while. St. Louis, that was an 8-point football game. It was 28-20. And St. Louis was getting a little bit of old Mo, and Hamilton Christian, Lake Charles College Prep was able to make enough plays to get the win late. I tell you what, if you want to see one of the more bizarre non-offsides calls you'll ever see, check out my Twitter page, because St. Louis was trying to go in to make it a 5-point football game, and the guy is in the St. Louis backfield by the time the ball is snapped. No call, and it ends up being a turnover on downs. Pretty bizarre. By the way, St. Louis always breeding kickers, and Will Flavin, who never kicked a football in his life before this year, he's just another one. I watched him nail a 65-yarder in pregame. The kid is spectacular. I'll put it to you that way.
We need more kicker talk, Jess, and I appreciate.
I love it.
This
I love it.
Be a niche for you.
I just wanted to see him kick the football. I told Truax for the game. I was like, look, I'm here to watch Will Flavin.
Well, you heard the color commentator on that highlight call the offsides before the play-by-play could actually call the kick. So yeah, an odd play there. So LCCP, they will take on Westlake, who got a win over Iota last night. They're 5-2, so that'll be a great matchup with the Blazers there. Kinder stays undefeated with a win over Oakdale. They've got 5 games scoring over 40 points. No huge surprise, but Kinder and Iowa, another set of undefeated teams, they get big wins as well last night.
Those were the other two I told you that could stay undefeated. And look,
we got it on the board here. We got a whiteboard with your survivor pool up here. So
yeah, I mean, I would stick with those. Don't look at my pickings, especially for this week, because that didn't go too well. But nevertheless, yeah, look, Iowa and Kinder, look, the train just keeps a rolling. If you're in the tracks, you better get out of the way, because those two teams are rolling through it. It's obviously Menard this week for Kinder. Menard's kind of had a couple of tough weeks over the last couple of weeks.
Last night, yeah.
Yeah, I think I think the challenger for them in that district, to be honest with you, I think is going to end up being Avoyelles, and I don't know if Avoyelles is going to be enough to take them down there in, I believe, week 10. Kinder just continues to roll. Isaiah Thomas is a freak. Brandon Perkins continues to do it on the wide outside. They're starting to figure things out defensively, because defensively it wasn't really looking great there in the beginning of the year, but they're starting to figure some things out on the defensive side of the football. Kinder, that's just a train that just keeps on rolling. I mean, that it's the same old every year. I mean, and that's great for Coach Tommy Johns. They're a lot of fun to watch. Coach John's a good friend of mine, and I always give him heck. I told him, I'm like, you guys got to play a good game for me to actually to come and broadcast. I broadcast the week 1 game that was billed up Iowa and Jennings, and you beat the guys by 28 points. You got to play a good game if you want me to come out and broadcast it. So we've always jumped on the Iowa train there in the playoffs. But look, they're another team that just keeps on rolling. A first-year quarterback. They really rode JV and Adams a little bit. Caston Lewis, they figured something out, bringing him from the defensive secondary and playing him at running back a little bit. Look, the Bugs are rolling. If they're on your schedule, I'd get out of the way.
A really good matchup that I want to just get your thoughts on before we get you out of here. So Jennings, they get a win over South Bow last night. Their Week 8 matchup will be Jennings and Notre Dame. I believe the Pios took a loss to LCA last week, but you like Jennings so far through 7 weeks as they go into that Week 8 matchup?
Yeah, look, Jennings, I watched them week 1. Wasn't super impressed. They had some things to figure out. They've continued to get better. Defensively, they've continued to get better. Offensively, they're starting to figure it out a little bit. They don't have that dominant running back. But I tell you what, they had a guy like DK Sams, who played a lot of defense last year. Played a lot of defense this year. Had 1 reception going into last week's game versus Lake Charles College Prep, and ripped off, I think, 8 receptions and over 100 yards. He was spectacular. So Jennings figured something out with throwing the football to DK Sams. And look, I think that's an interesting matchup. Last year, I did that game, and that was the first time that anybody from Southwest Louisiana, in my recollection, had defeated Notre Dame in a very long time. And they were they were able to get the win last year. There's 2 different teams this year. We'll see. I mean, that is a big matchup. Would be a huge one for Notre Dame, or for Jennings.
Are you on the clock with the Southland Conference today? Cowboys back in action.
Oh yeah. We got a 6 o'clock 6 o'clock kick tonight, and McNeese and Houston Christian. It should be an interesting one.
Chaston Tavares, he's got the Pigskin preview Wednesday nights at the Walk-Ons in Lake Charles. Him and Patrick Fry recap each week, preview the upcoming week, and they've had some great crowds down there at the Walk-Ons. Check that out Wednesday nights. You can watch it online. I usually do. And Chaston, Patrick, and that crew do a great job covering the Lake Charles area. Chaston, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the Cowboys game today. We'll talk to you soon, bud.
Appreciate you guys as always. Have a good one.
Thanks, Chaston. You too. Yeah, so some really good matchups for Jennings come up in the last couple of weeks. They'll get Notre Dame, St. Louis, and Westlake, I believe, to round out the regular season. So there'll be some good games continually taking place in the Lake area. Let's head to the capital area and talk to Jace Lejeune of Gridiron Football and the Gridiron All-American Football Game, sponsor of the Red River Roundup. And Jace, couple dominating wins that I want to start with.
Mhm.
Madison Prep, 4-game win streak, they get a shutout. U High, 4-game win streak, they get a shutout. Dunham, they also get a shutout. The Tigers are dominating. I
Yeah.
think that we know why, but in a bracket, Division III Select, that is as competitive and as well put together, literally as any of those 8 brackets, Dunham is just got to be right at the top right now because of what they have done on the scoreboard in the regular season.
Yeah, Marshall. This may be Dunham's most complete team under Neil Weiner. I mean, obviously, everybody's going to point to Elijah Haven, rightfully so, right? But their defense is really, really good. And keep in mind, Ascension Catholic, they have a really great running back in Trevin Simon. He's actually been offered to play in a bowl game at the end of the year. And on Thursday, Simon ran for, yes, you're hearing this right, over 500 yards of offense. He ran for 500 yards and 7 touchdowns against a good St. John team, and Dunham shut him down. So it comes to show you how good this Dunham defense is. I've been impressed by their defense, and a lot of the headlines go to Elijah Haven and their wide receivers and their offense, and rightfully so. But what makes this team so great is their defense and how really good they're playing on that side of the football as well.
Really good matchup between Central and Catholic High last night. Central takes the loss. They've lost 2 out of their last 3, but just to check in, those losses are to Lafayette Christian and Catholic High. So, it's natural to keep your eyes on the defending state champs throughout the regular season. But coming off of that game against the Cubs, where do you think Central goes from here as they finish out with Liberty Zachary and Scotlandville?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially what happened last night with Liberty. Liberty defeated Zachary last night 52-31. So that made it really interesting. I talked to Coach Zachary on our show after the game last night, and they've been able to run the football really well. And Central, now I know that they've had a tough game against Catholic because Catholic's got 4 great running backs. So everybody talks about Jaden Miles, but they have 3 other great ones that are juniors. So you're all going to return them back next year for Catholic. And if you're Liberty, like, okay, we just ran the football really well. They got a great running back in Zayden Foster. I don't think anybody talks about him, but he's a great running back for the Liberty Patriots. And if you are Liberty, like, hey, we're going to go right and attack Central again, running the football. That's what we're going to try to do. So you're coming off a loss against Lafayette Christian, and right now Lafayette Christian's looking like they're one of the top 5-6 teams in the state, regardless of classification. And then you follow that up against Catholic, and now you got to play a Liberty team that is coming off their biggest win in program history. Especially since coming back to the varsity level against Zachary. So, yeah, this is a tough stretch right now for Coach Semino's squad, and I'm very curious to see how they respond after back-to-back losses, and now you got to play a Liberty team that's really feeling themselves right now.
Prairieville gets another win. That's a 3-game winning streak for them. North Iberville gets another win. I believe that they remain undefeated coming back into varsity football. And East Ascension with a wild win over St. Amal. I think I heard last night that was like a 2-point conversion that St. Amal went for and didn't get. But really starting to see some of these teams that you're used to seeing kind of get in the driver's seat in district and win some of those matchups. But before we leave the Baton Rouge area, because I got a few other things I want to ask you about it. Anything else that stands out just right there in that metro area from last night and so far through 7 weeks?
Yeah, is you pointed out kind of that district you talked about, all right, with East Ascension, Prairieville, Denham Springs, East Ascension, San Mall. Anytime that they play, it's like we don't care what your record is, we don't care how far you went to the playoffs. Did you beat Santa Mall? Did you beat EA? Because that's bragging rights for a whole year. That rivalry game is top notch, and that was a classic. But it comes to show you how impressed I am with Prairieville, just because of their second year in varsity action in 5A, and you're able to defeat a really good East Ascension team just a couple weeks ago. And Denham Springs got a big win as well. So I'm keeping my eye on that. That's a huge win for Brock Mathern because Sam Moss played some really good football this year with the quarterback Cooper Babb. And you mentioned North Iberville. They got a tough task coming up. I believe, I think it could be next week. I got to check my schedule, but they got Ascension Catholic coming up, and that is going to be a big time game. If North Iberville can find a way to win that football game, they're going to go 10-0. If they find a way to be Ascension Catholic, which is pretty crazy considering this is their second year back in varsity action and what they're doing this year. So, yeah, I mean, then that whole 5A district, and then talk about North Iberville as well. I mean, those have definitely been the standouts. Obviously, the biggest storyline to me last night was Liberty getting that win over Zachary. That definitely was the one that really stood out to me. Obviously, Catholic getting a big win over Central, but those are basically the biggest takeaways.
You've mentioned, and really ever since you kind of mentioned them, that they've gone on a 2-game win streak. The Episcopal Knights, you had that game this past week. They still have Dunham in week 9, I believe, but they've got a manageable last 3 games to maybe finish with a 6-4 record or something close to that to position them in D3 Select.
Yeah, this team, and I've talked to a lot of coaches because when I call games for Episcopal, I always try to talk to the opposing team's coaches, and they said, we're not paying attention. Like I talked to Ascension Catholic's coach, I talked to Slaughter Charter's coach, and they told me that we don't look at Episcopal's record. Like they may be the best 2-4 team or 1-4 team in the state. And I think what happened last night was sometimes there's that saying like you are what your record says you are, but a lot of times, you got to look at it more into it. And Episcopal they came into the game last night 2-4. They played Slaughter Charter 5-1. You got to give credit to Slaughter Charter. They beat the teams that they were supposed to beat. They played a team that was on their level in East Feliciana last week and lost to East Feliciana. And I think Episcopal playing a really tough non-district schedule. You played St. Michael, you played Ascension Catholic, you played Country Day, you played North Lake Christian, you played all those teams. And I think that's really helped Episcopal. And that's 2 wins in a row. They won the game 30-8, which is a really good win over a good Slaughter team. But they dominated that football game from start to finish. We know they can run the football with Taj Callahan. I think the passing game is taking a leaps and bounds, a big step with Zach Q, the quarterback. He's got a lot of weapons to throw the football to. He threw 3 touchdowns last night. And their defense, which was young and inexperienced, couldn't get a stop early in the season. It seems like they're getting better and better as the season goes on. Like you mentioned, a manageable schedule. You do have Dunham coming up in 2 weeks, 2 Thursdays from now. But you do end the season also with Northeast and Capital. And if you have a chance to win those 2 games, you can bounce back with a 5-5 record and set yourself pretty good in the playoffs. And I tell you what, there's not a lot of teams out there in that division. You talked about that bracket, exactly, Division III Select. I don't think there's a lot of teams that want to play Episcopal in the first round. I can tell you that.
A few teams from around the area that don't necessarily have these undefeated records, so may have going under the radar a little bit, but Lutcher took the loss to E.D. White. So they're sitting at 3-4, but they've got a really good opportunity to finish the regular season on a win streak. St. James, they're 5-2, I believe. Lutcher's 3-4, but what's your pulse of football in St. James Parish right now?
Yeah, that was a bit of a revenge game for E.D. White. I actually called that game last year when it was E.D. White and Lutcher. Lutcher was able to win that game and the district championship. And E.D. White, I know they had a tough way to start the season, but I kind of knew that, kind of like Episcopal, like you have to look more into who they played at the beginning of the season. Because when they started 0-3, I mean, they played Holy Cross, Jesuit, and Honville. They played 3 5A teams.
Yeah.
And then when they finally got into like district play and the teams at their level, you saw how they're able to bounce back. And big wins over Lutcher, that was a big win, get revenge over last week. And then St. James, St. James is playing at a really, really high level ever since that wild finish, right? against St. Charles Catholic to win that football game at the gun. But River Parishes are always going to be really, really great. A lot of talent in that area, and there's going to be a lot of teams that can do a lot of great stuff. I mean, Honville's having a little bit of a great season as well under Coach Boyne, and I mean, we talk about St. James and Lutcher. Lutcher's been kind of up and down this year, but is a young football team this year. And Edie White going back, I wasn't really worried about him. Wasn't really hitting the panic button whatsoever when they started the season 0-3, and you're kind of seeing that now.
Yeah, and Lutcher's QB over in Lafayette making things happen for the Cajuns, getting there and getting some snaps. Lunch Winfield. So he's still making headlines. Southern Lab took a loss last night to Kaplan. Kentwood, I mentioned a second ago, they got a win to go to 4-3. Those two teams will match up next week.
Yeah.
Kentwood, I believe, and I forgive me for forgetting this, I think this may be a first-year head coach for the Kangaroos.
Second year.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and again, Jules Sumner has really kind of taken the torch for that area, for the Kentwood area. But Kangaroos and Kittens next week, that'll be a really good matchup, not only for team nicknames, but two good football teams too.
You're right, Marshall. You talk about the Kittens and the Kangaroos.
Yeah, it sounds like a plush animal bowl. Yeah, I love it.
Right, plush animal bowl. I like that. So kind of the same thing for Kentwood. I mean, they had a tough couple games start the season. You play East Feliciana, you play Jules Sumner, who's still undefeated right now, and then they really got it going. Their only loss in that stretch was Amite, and I actually saw Amite play Thursday night against Pine. They get a 26 win over the Pine Raiders on Thursday, and Amite's on the 5-game winning streak. So I mean, Southern Lab, you kind of look at their record, I believe 3-4, but they've had some injury stuff that's happened. Jerry Botley, very talented quarterback over there at Southern Lab, has been dealing with some injuries. And Dexter Ricard actually played in her junior high All-American Bowl game. He's been stepping up to start this year. They've had a really tough schedule. Look at the teams that they played this year. Liberty, Southern Lab played Liberty, and you saw them beat Zachary last night. You see Denham Springs. Denham Springs is having a great year, and one of the teams that can compete for that district championship. Madison Prep. Madison Prep only has one loss, and they played a really tough non-district schedule, and then Kaplan last night. So really the record is going to be one of those things that is not a record you normally would see from a Southern Lab team, but make no mistake about it. I mean, you got Kentwood coming up, and if you find a way to get that win, to get some momentum going, they still have 2 winnable games, Central Private and White and Thrive Academy to end the season. So like I talked about Episcopal, I don't think you will see a lot of teams being really excited if they're a high seed and have to play Southern Lab first round. I can tell you that in Division 4 select.
Get you out of here on this one, Jason. Just curious your thoughts on 2 undefeated teams that very well could remain that way when they match up in Week 9. John Curtis and Edna Carr. I mean, what I've looked for every week is where's that challenge for Edna Carr? And if it's not here in Louisiana, that's fine. Credit to the Cougars. Nothing against them, but kudos for how good they are. But if Curtis can get through Jesuit in Week 8, a team that Edna Carr beat this past weekend, that Week 9 matchup will be a really good one, and maybe an opportunity for John Curtis to try to deliver some body blows to the Cougars.
Yeah, it's one of those things everybody talks about. Edna Carr, deservedly so. They're at the top of the mountaintop. I talked about that on our show last night, Marshall. They're at the top of the mountain. Until you can knock them off, like, nobody's going to pick against them. And I want to pick against them. They don't really have any weaknesses. John Johnson, quarterback over there. It's a dual threat quarterback. He's got a lot of weapons to throw the football to. They got really talented running backs. Defense, Richard Anderson, the LSU commit, leads the defensive line, and you back-ended with an LSU commit and Aiden Hall at safety. So, and Bryce Brown's doing an awesome job with that program. I mean, obviously building a dynasty over there at the car. But when you look at it, it's hard to go against JT Curtis. And not a lot of times JT Curtis can come in and saying that we are the underdog and people are doubting us. But this is an opportunity for John Curtis. Everybody was saying going into the season, okay, it's in the car and everybody else. Like, who is going to be that second team? Now, and John Curtis has an opportunity to show that, hey, like, we don't only have to be the second team. We can be the team that beats Endicott. And they went to California, got a big win there, out of state. And John Curtis has played really well, obviously, in the Catholic League. So undefeated. It looks like both those two teams are trying right for an undefeated matchup, which will be huge, one of the biggest matchups in the state. And that will be an entertaining one. Remember, JT Curtis beat Endicott to get his record-breaking win just a couple of years ago. Yeah. So, if there's a team that can do it, it's definitely JT Curtis. It's a go JT Curtis and the Patriots.
That's a great point. Jace Lejeune with Gridiron Football and the Gridiron Football All-American game. Chase, we appreciate your time today. Got LSU and Vanderbilt. I'm sure you'll be covering that one. But follow Gridiron Football on the web and online. They'll keep you in tune from everything happening between the lines. And Jace, we thank you so much for your time this morning, sir.
Absolutely, Marshall. Always looking forward to this conversation. Hope you have yourself a good rest of your day. And thanks once again. Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. Thank you, Jace. Yeah, a lot of juggernauts in the Baton Rouge area. We'll keep an eye on those teams. And time now to get our report from the Lafayette area. And we will bring on Shannon Belt with the Lafayette Advertiser. She covers Acadiana sports for Lafayette Advertiser and 337 Preps. And Shannon, you were at Ascension Episcopal last night. That's one of two small teams in that area that are 7-0, along with Westminster Christian. But the Blue Gators giving teams the blues so far this fall.
Yeah, Blue Gators. That was my first time getting to see them play this season, and I was pretty impressed. They definitely used their dual threat quarterback, Brandon Mitchell, to the best of his abilities, and that showed last night for sure.
And Westminster also undefeated. But one team that I've kind of been following since you put out that article about Kevin Small is the Kaplan Pirates. They get a really nice win over Southern Lab last night. They're 5-2. Tell us a little bit about your coverage of Kaplan and Kevin and what they've done so far the regular season.
Yeah, now how about them Pirates? I mean, when I went there earlier in the week, and I talked to Kevin because he had won the Daily Advertiser's mid-season Player of the Year poll, and he kind of was like, a lot of people didn't think I deserved it. People didn't think I should even be on the list, but he was just so ready, and that kind of was maybe driving him and the rest of the team heading into that Southern Lab matchup, and it showed. I think they're a ground and pound offense. I may mispronounce the running back's name, Demarie Cormier. I think that's how you may pronounce his last name. He did pretty well. I think he rushed for about 145 yards and a touchdown, or 2 touchdowns, something like that, to help them beat Southern Lab. And just overall, I'm amazed with what Kaplan has done, especially given right before the season started, they parted ways with their longtime head coach.
You're right.
And had to get a whole new coach right before then. And a lot of people were like, oh man, last year they went 8-2 with that coach because, he'd been there for a long time. That was his second stint there. Right at media day, they lost the coach, and boom, now you got to find someone else. They go over to not too far, Vermilion Catholic, find John Thompson, and he's getting those guys ready to go. He said big men lead, and Kevin Smalls is that big man who's leading their defense and on offensive line as well, helping them establish that run game. And I think that's why they were able to pull off that big win this week.
Yeah, that's a great point. I forgot all about that coaching change that happened late, but 2-game win streak for the Pirates, and they got a chance to go on a run here. You've seen Lafayette Christian so far this fall. I'll admit I was a little bit wrong just because, how do you replace Juwan Johnson? But don't ask me that question. Ask LCA how they do it, because they're right back. And Jace mentioned it a minute ago. They might be one of the best teams in the state, regardless of class or anything like that. They controlled Notre Dame, who's a really good team last night.
Yeah.
Are the Knights, in your opinion, as good as I think they might be?
Yeah, I will say they have been one of the better teams, or the best team that I've seen so far this season. Just what they could do on offense, it's hard to stop. It's hard to account for Braylon Walker in that backfield. He could run, he could take off, and then when he does throw, those guys are catching it. He's got, a 3-star wide receiver who could catch. He's got another really, really tall, I think he's about 6'2" wide receiver, 6'4", Draylon August, who could also catch really well too. And then defense, they've got a lot of big guys on defense, a lot of big offensive linemen. It's hard for teams when, later in the game, you still got that big guy who's still pushing in the trenches, making way for their offense and making way for what they're trying to do. So they're definitely the team to beat in the 3-3-7, and they further proved that last night. I did not expect it to be 41-7 against Notre Dame. I thought it was going to be a lower scoring game because I know Notre Dame likes to ground and pound it, but man, they put it on them.
Yeah, the Knights, so impressive. And again, I don't know why I'm the least bit surprised, because that's what they do. Another team you've covered this month is Karen Crow. They get a win over Sam Houston last night. They've got a lot of talent on offense.
A lot of talent. I think from year 1 to year 2, for me, at least covering the area, I've seen like Karen Crow take the biggest jump. I think when I first came here, I knew that they had that reputation, that winning culture. But then that last season just wasn't what they kind of wanted. But they're putting all the pieces together now, and at the perfect time, because Chance Babineau's last year they're going to have that type of a weapon who could do what he does on offense and on D. He could do everything. Like, yeah, he's do it all. Like anytime I write about him, I gotta slap that do it all tagline on him, because I've seen him do it all. Every time I go to a Karen Crow game, he gets a pick 6, and that's pretty crazy to say. Like, they have so many weapons. I think that their biggest test is probably going to be trying to get past Acadiana. Once, if they could beat Acadiana, the playoffs could be really, really fun for them.
Yeah, I believe Acadiana has a 3-game losing streak and a 3-game win streak this year, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a good matchup for Karen Crow. Southside has a 6-game winning streak. Turling's Catholic is undefeated still. Some of these big 4A, 5A schools in Lafayette, like we've said during this conversation, are kind of taking that step up on the podium and saying, you're going to have to come through Acadiana if you want to get to the Superdome.
No, yeah, especially like Turlin's Catholic. I know for them, their test will be STM. They're going to have to battle that out. That'll be a dogfight to the end. And Southside, their test will also be Acadiana. I mean, it's who's going to beat Acadiana type of year. And this is the year to do it. I think in the past, teams were like, "Oh, we're going to beat them," and then they get there and it doesn't pan out. But this year, I think it's anyone's game. No knock on Acadiana. They're still going to put up a fight like they have been. Their bread and butter is district play. They're going to perform well in district play, despite that 0-3 start. But yeah, I definitely see Turlin's making a deep run, because they're another one who has big offensive linemen. You got big boys in the trenches, you're going to do well.
You'll be set.
I think.
So, Shannon, done a great job really recapping these high school games for us in the 337 area with 337 Press. But what other work are you doing with the Lafayette Advertiser? I know you're covering the Cajuns and some college athletics, and really not just football, but you've got eyes and ears on just about everything in the Lafayette area when it comes to athletics.
Oh, yeah. So I do a little bit of everything. I also cover UL football, UL basketball, UL softball, trying to get a little bit of UL men's coverage in there. But it's just me. So, I try to get to where I'm anywhere and everywhere I try to be at. And then high school, I'm trying to also cover volleyball, more female sports as well. I know for volleyball, STM is just like a juggernaut. I think I don't even know how many straight they've won. I think they may be on 8 or 9 or
Well, there's
something
a
like
lot of
that.
other schools trying to catch up with them that are investing in volleyball too
Yeah,
to match up with Cougars. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Those Cougars in volleyball are pretty legit. But yeah, I just cover anything sports happening in this 337 area. I try to get to it. But my bread and butter is always going to be prep football, of
And
course.
and so you'll be covering the Cajuns today
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
advertising.
Homecoming weekend for the
Oh,
Cajuns
cool.
against Southern Miss. I know it's a lot of bad blood, especially baseball times when it comes to Southern Miss and UL. But today should be a good game. I'm definitely intrigued to see what happens.
Yeah, Sunbelt has some great rivalries. Shannon Belt with the Lafayette
Yeah.
Advertiser. Check her out online. She's one of my favorite follows on Thursday and Friday night, keeping up with prep games around the area. She covers it. She brings the facts, but she also puts a little of her flair on there. And I love to keep up with you, Shannon, as you cover high school sports. And thank you so much for your time this morning. Hope we can talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you. That's Shannon Belt with the Lafayette Advertiser, 337 Preps. Again, follow her on Thursday and Friday nights. The game she's at, you'll know everything you need to know, and you'll be entertained while doing it. She does a really, really phenomenal job covering athletics in the Lafayette area. And now we will go to our report. Chasten was on the road heading to the McNeese game today, but we've got a live report from Nashville, Tennessee. Caroline McPherson of SeeInsideTheSEC.com. She's the founder and publisher there. And Caroline, you're in Nashville today to cover the Tigers and the Commodores. But that's got some really interesting elements for a Louisiana football fan, whether it's college or high school.
Oh, sorry, my phone. I'm trying to do it on my phone today, so I'm trying to.
It's a road game. It's a road trip, Caroline.
It is. It's new. Good morning, and yeah, I'm in Nashville, and it's really cool because there's something a little special, a different element to this game than most games that I cover. We actually have a Louisiana player that plays for Vanderbilt, and so I've been kind of trying to dig into that, and so I got to actually get some answers from Tate, and so I kind of wrote an article on it. If you guys want to check it out, I know you have it pulled up right there, but it was really cool, and so I encourage anyone from a football fan to even a football player that's wanting to go play at the next level. There's some really good information in that article to go check out.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I mean, I covered Tate's games when he was in high school, and he's, like we mentioned, still trying to crack the rotation on Vanderbilt's roster on defense. But he was dominant for OCS, and that's a fantastic high school program. So I'm sure it's been interesting to talk to Tate, because as good as OCS is, it's still a small school program. And Monroe's a big city, and they're one of the best teams there, but I'm sure talking to him that it's been interesting to kind of see his journey from Monroe to Nashville and go from the top dog, on his team to finding his way against a really talented Commodores roster. But it's got to be really quite a moment for him to be a Louisiana kid and see the Tigers coming into town to his home stadium today.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing about Tate is, like you said, a small town, almost like a small town hero, right? It's a name that everyone in North Louisiana knows, and you're really familiar with it. And you're going from being your high school football star to go into a team where there's other stars, and you're not the main person. You're not the name that gets called every single time. And that's one thing I feel like that makes Tate a lot different is he seems very humble. He's glad to be a part of something, even if he's not always the one that's he's putting out for his team in other ways, whether that's encouraging or just being there when someone needs them. He has that character where he's just glad to be there, and he's humble, and he realizes it doesn't always have to be about him, right? It's no I in team. And that was really cool to kind of see that element too, because it's not something you always see when you have players that they're used to being the number one, they're used to being the star, and then they go somewhere and it's like, okay, I'm not it's not all about me anymore.
Got to wait my turn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in particular with this matchup, I believe that's an 11 a.m. kick. So, an early game between the Tigers and Commodores, two schools that you cover very thoroughly. And I believe some Louisiana recruits are visiting there today, visiting Vanderbilt on behalf of Vanderbilt. I'm sure, we know that LSU is doing their thing on the recruiting trail as well. But just looking at from a college standpoint, what are you looking for today between this what used to be an SEC West and SEC East matchup? But Tigers have had the upper hand on Vanderbilt throughout the years. But what are you looking at today between these two?
I think it's going to be really important that for LSU, we need to go in and we need to take care of business. If you're an LSU fan, then you know that morning games are not really our strength. And so that's going to be a challenge.
Tailgating is
especially
our
being on the
morning
road.
strength.
Yeah, and then it's like I'm just hoping that Whit Weeks is going to play. He's listed as questionable, and I think they said that he was going to warm up and see how it goes, but it's doubtful. So that's going to be a huge effect. And then also for Vanderbilt, if they can come in and handle business, you have Diego Pavia, who you saw him didn't put up his best performance against Alabama, but he's not a terrible quarterback, and he's been there. And this is where they beat Alabama last year when they upset them at home. So it's definitely going to be a challenge. I think this is the first time in 25 years that I can't remember because the numbers get confused. It's the first time in 25 years that Vanderbilt has gone into a ranked matchup and been favored, and it's the first time in 77 years that Vanderbilt has been favored over LSU. So it's going to be really cool to see that. And honestly, as an LSU fan, I'm kind of nervous because I also am a huge Vanderbilt fan. You know that. So I'm kind of just like, I'll be happy either way, but I want my Tigers to win, but I want it to be a good fight.
Yeah, and there's a good chance that it will be. And like we said, I mean, LSU, they recruit the state, 13 months out of the year. But Vanderbilt has really come inside of the Pelican State in the past few years with Shepard, the running back, and Hamby and a few others that have met. Or excuse me, Shepard, Will Shepard, the wide receiver, Tate Hamby. So Vanderbilt's been actively recruiting in Louisiana, and it's really cool to see that you're up there to cover that game today. And it's a great article on Tate Hamby because, again, it just tells the Friday Night Lights story. So, Caroline, we thank you so much for your time this morning. Check her out, SEC.com. Whether you follow SEC football all the way through or you just want to keep track on what's happening in Louisiana and recruiting, Caroline's site gets better and better every week. Check it out on Sundays as she publishes new content there. And she will keep you caught up on the Southeastern Conference. Caroline, thank you so much. And I don't know, go Tigers, go Commodores. Just have a good morning.
Go both. Thank you for having me, Marshall.
Thanks, Caroline. Talk to you soon. Yeah, good report from Caroline McPherson up in Nashville to cover that game. And we want to thank everyone who joined us this morning. Mike McMillan with the North Shore Prep Report, Sean Fox with Sports Talk 97.7 and the North Delta Ramble, Chasen Tavares, the Pigskin Preview, Southwest Louisiana, Jace Lejeune with Gridiron All-American Football Game, Shannon Belt with the Lafayette Advertiser 337 Preps, and, of course, Caroline McPherson with SEC.com. Want to thank our executive producer, Doug Gann, for helping us get this show up every Saturday morning. Don't forget, every Saturday mornings, 8 till whenever we are finished, we'll recap everything that happened on Thursday, Fridays, and we'll be doing every Fridays in the afternoon around 3 o'clock. We'll have a Friday edition of the Red River Roundup where we will try to cover Thursday's games, big action that happened there, and then also try to include some interviews with players, coaches, and important football minds around the state of Louisiana. So Saturday mornings at 8, Friday afternoons at 3, you can catch the Red River Roundup all the way through the Superdome. Thanks for watching and being with us today. My name is Marshall Leffler. You've been watching the Red River Roundup on 446 Sports.